The mission enters one of its most intense stages as Rambo realizes that the enemy is now extremely close and there is almost no room left for mistakes. He has spent the entire journey trying to protect the prisoner, and now every decision carries the possibility of life or death. Rambo remains calm, but beneath his controlled expression there is a growing sense of urgency. He knows that the prisoner cannot survive another period of captivity, and he also understands that the people behind the mission may be willing to sacrifice him to keep the truth hidden. This knowledge makes Rambo more determined than ever to find a way out. The jungle around him continues to provide both danger and opportunity. Thick vegetation makes movement difficult, but it also gives Rambo places to hide and observe his enemies. He uses his knowledge of the environment to remain unpredictable, moving carefully and avoiding unnecessary exposure. His military training has taught him to think several steps ahead, and he understands that surviving against a larger force requires more than courage. It requires patience, timing, and the ability to recognize when to attack and when to disappear. The prisoner remains Rambo's highest priority. He has already endured years of suffering, and Rambo refuses to let him become another forgotten casualty of the war. This responsibility has transformed Rambo's understanding of the mission. What began as an assignment has become a personal commitment, and he is willing to risk everything to keep his promise. His actions demonstrate a powerful sense of loyalty because he is protecting someone who cannot protect himself. Kobau continues to stand beside Rambo, even though the danger around them has reached an extreme level. Her courage has become an important source of emotional strength for Rambo, and their connection gives him something he has been missing for years: trust. Rambo is normally a solitary figure who keeps his emotions hidden, but his concern for County Bao shows that the experiences of war have not completely destroyed his ability to care. He wants to protect her just as strongly as he wants to protect the prisoner, making the mission more personal than ever. Meanwhile, the betrayal by the people behind the operation becomes increasingly clear. Rambo understands that the officials may have been willing to accept the existence of prisoners as long as nobody was forced to confront the political consequences. His decision to rescue the prisoner threatens their plans, which means that he cannot depend on them for support. This creates a powerful conflict between the soldier on the ground and the people controlling the operation from a distance. Rambo realizes that authority does not always mean responsibility, and his actions become a rejection of the idea that orders should be followed without question. He believes that protecting a human life is more important than protecting an official story. As enemy forces close in, Rambo prepares himself for the possibility of direct confrontation. He knows that he cannot continue hiding forever, and he begins considering how to use the surrounding environment if fighting becomes unavoidable. His strategy remains focused on creating opportunities rather than simply destroying his opponents. Rambo understands that he is outnumbered, so he must use intelligence and surprise to overcome the advantage of the enemy. This makes the tension especially strong because the audience knows that a single mistake could end the rescue attempt. The physical strain of the mission continues to affect Rambo. He has been moving through difficult terrain while dealing with constant danger, and his body is exhausted. Yet his determination remains strong because he knows that other people are depending on him. He does not have the luxury of stopping to recover. His strength comes from the belief that the mission must continue regardless of how difficult it becomes. This is what separates Rambo from the people who abandoned the prisoners. He is willing to accept personal suffering in order to protect someone else. The story also explores the deeper psychological meaning of Rambo's return to Vietnam. The battlefield represents the memories that have shaped his life, but it is also where he understands himself best. He may struggle to fit into ordinary society, yet in the jungle his instincts and training give him purpose. The rescue mission allows him to use those abilities for something he personally believes in. Instead of being controlled by military orders, he is now acting according to his own sense of justice. This transformation makes his character more complex and emotionally powerful. The enemy continues to search, and the atmosphere becomes increasingly tense. Rambo knows that his opponents are adapting and that the longer he remains in the area, the more dangerous the situation becomes. He therefore looks for an opportunity to make a decisive move. His patience remains important, but he also understands that hesitation could be just as dangerous as rushing. He must choose the perfect moment to act, knowing that the prisoner in County Bao may not have another chance. The contrast between Rambo and the officials remains central to the story. They see the mission through reports and political consequences, while Rambo sees the human suffering directly. He cannot accept the idea that a soldier can be treated as a problem simply because rescuing him is inconvenient. His refusal to abandon the prisoner becomes a statement about loyalty and dignity. Rambo is willing to stand alone because he believes that doing what is right matters more than receiving approval from people in authority. As this part approaches its conclusion, Rambo understands that the final stage of the mission is near. The enemy is closing in, the escape route is becoming more dangerous, and the possibility of a direct battle is almost certain. Yet Rambo remains focused and ready. He has survived overwhelming odds before, and now he is prepared to use everything he has learned to protect the people depending on him. His journey has become a fight not only for survival but also for truth, freedom, and the dignity of soldiers who were forgotten. The next stage promises to push Rambo closer to his physical and emotional limits as he prepares to make the most dangerous move of the entire mission. Rambo's mission reaches an even more dangerous point as the enemy continues to tighten its grip and the possibility of a peaceful escape becomes almost impossible. He understands that the prisoner and County Bow are now depending entirely on his ability to make the right decisions, and he refuses to let fear control him. Rambo carefully studies the jungle around him, searching for a route that will give them the best chance of survival. Every movement has to be calculated because the enemy is close, and even a small mistake could expose their position. His military experience allows him to remain patient, using the terrain and natural surroundings to hide their movements. The jungle has become both an obstacle and an advantage, and Rambo knows how to use both sides of it. The prisoner remains at the center of his mission. Rambo understands that this man has already spent years suffering and waiting for someone to rescue him, and he refuses to allow history to repeat itself. His determination is now much stronger than the orders that originally brought him into the jungle. He is no longer trying to prove himself to the military or complete an assignment for recognition. He is fighting because he believes that one abandoned soldier deserves another chance at freedom. This moral purpose gives Rambo the strength to continue even when the situation appears hopeless. Bao remains beside him, and her courage continues to make a major difference. She knows how dangerous the situation has become, yet she chooses to stay with Rambo and help him. Their connection has grown through shared danger, and Rambo's concern for her safety shows that his emotional defenses are beginning to break down. For someone who has spent so much time isolated from other people, this relationship becomes extremely important. Rambo now has someone else to protect, making every decision more complicated and more meaningful. Meanwhile, the betrayal from the people behind the operation becomes clearer. Rambo understands that the discovery of the prisoner has created a serious problem for those who wanted the situation controlled. Instead of celebrating the discovery, they appear interested in preventing the truth from becoming public. Rambo's refusal to abandon the prisoner threatens that plan, which means that he is now fighting against enemies on multiple levels. The physical enemy is searching for him in the jungle, while the people behind the mission are trying to control the outcome from a distance. This realization makes Rambo even more determined because he knows that if he fails, the prisoner may disappear again and the truth may never be known. The enemy continues to move closer, and Rambo prepares for the possibility of direct combat. He knows that a large confrontation could be extremely dangerous, especially while protecting the prisoner, so he looks for ways to use the environment to reduce the enemy's advantage. His strategy remains based on patience, timing, and survival. He does not fight simply because he can. He fights when necessary, and every action is connected to the larger goal of creating a safe path forward. The physical strain of the mission becomes increasingly obvious. Rambo has been under constant pressure for a long time, and his body is exhausted. Yet his determination refuses to weaken. He knows that the prisoner cannot survive another capture and that County Bayo's safety also depends on him. His sense of responsibility becomes stronger than his fatigue. This is one of the most important aspects of Rambo's character because it shows that his strength is not simply physical. His ability to continue comes from a powerful emotional commitment to the people around him. The story also continues to explore the psychological consequences of war. Rambo's return to Vietnam forces him to confront memories that have shaped his entire life. The jungle represents a painful past, but it is also the place where he feels most capable because his survival skills were developed there. This creates a complicated relationship with the battlefield. It is both the source of his trauma and the environment in which he knows exactly how to survive. His mission allows him to use those abilities for a purpose he has chosen himself. Instead of being a weapon controlled by others, Rambo becomes a man making his own decisions. The contrast between Rambo and the people who control the mission becomes increasingly powerful. They may have authority, but Rambo has responsibility. They can make decisions from a safe distance, while Rambo is the person who sees the consequences directly. He understands that the prisoner is a human being, not simply a political problem. His refusal to abandon the man therefore becomes a rejection of the idea that soldiers can be sacrificed for convenience. This theme gives the story a deeper emotional meaning and makes Rambo's struggle more than a simple action-adventure. As the enemy search intensifies, Rambo begins preparing for what may be the most difficult stage of the mission. He knows that the time for hiding may soon be over, and he may have to fight his way toward freedom. Even though the odds are against him, he remains confident in his ability to adapt. His experience has taught him that overwhelming numbers do not always guarantee victory, especially in an environment where he can use surprise and strategy. He remains focused on the people he is protecting rather than on the number of enemies around him. The tension continues to build because the audience can sense that the final confrontation is approaching. Rambo's path has taken him from following orders to challenging the people who gave them. He has discovered the prisoner, refused to abandon him, lost trust in the system, and accepted responsibility for the consequences of his choices. Now he must face the final stage of the mission with very little support. His courage comes from knowing that there is no easy way out. He cannot undo the betrayal, but he can refuse to allow it to determine the fate of the prisoner. By the end of this part, Rambo is ready for the next major confrontation. The enemy is closing in, the prisoner and County Bow remain in danger, and Rambo's physical and emotional strength are being tested to their limits. Yet he continues forward because he believes that freedom is worth fighting for and that no soldier should be forgotten when there is still a chance to bring him home. The tension reaches another major point as Rambo realizes that there is almost no safe path left and the enemy is preparing to close the trap around him. He understands that the prisoner is the most vulnerable person in the group, so every decision must be made with his protection in mind. Rambo remains calm and carefully observes the surrounding jungle, searching for any weakness that could provide an escape. His experience allows him to recognize small details that others might miss, and he uses the environment to create distance between himself and the enemy. The jungle is filled with thick vegetation, hidden paths, and difficult terrain, but Rambo knows how to turn those obstacles into advantages. He has spent years learning how to survive in environments where one mistake can be fatal, and now those skills are being pushed to their limits. The prisoner continues to depend on Rambo, and this responsibility has become the strongest motivation behind his actions. Rambo knows that the man has already spent years waiting for rescue, and he refuses to let another opportunity disappear. The idea of abandoning him has become completely unacceptable. What began as an assignment has now become a personal promise, and Rambo is willing to risk everything to keep it. Bao remains beside him, showing extraordinary courage despite the growing danger. Her presence gives Rambo emotional support and reminds him that he is not completely alone. Their relationship has developed through shared danger and trust, and Rambo's concern for her safety reveals the emotional side of his character. He understands that his choices have placed her in danger, and he becomes determined to protect her as well as the prisoner. At the same time, the betrayal by the people behind the mission continues to weigh heavily on Rambo. He has realized that they may have never intended to rescue the prisoners and that his discovery threatens their plans. The fact that the people who sent him into the jungle may now want him to fail creates an additional layer of danger. Rambo is forced to question the system he once served, but he does not allow this betrayal to change his belief in the value of human life. Instead, it strengthens his determination to finish the rescue. He believes that a soldier's life should never be sacrificed simply because rescuing him creates political difficulties. This belief becomes the moral foundation of his mission. The enemy continues to move closer, and Rambo knows that hiding will soon become impossible. He begins preparing for a direct confrontation while still searching for a route that could allow the prisoner to escape. His strategy remains controlled and patient. He does not want to waste energy fighting when he can avoid it, but he is prepared to defend the people with him if the enemy attacks. This balance between stealth and combat keeps the suspense high because the audience knows that Rambo could be forced into battle at any moment. The physical demands of the mission are also becoming severe. Rambo is exhausted from constant movement, danger, and responsibility, but he refuses to stop. He knows that the prisoner may not survive another capture, and that knowledge gives him a reason to keep moving even when his own body is struggling. His endurance demonstrates the strength of his character, but the story also reminds us that he is human. He feels exhaustion, fear, and emotional pain, yet he continues because he believes that the mission is worth the sacrifice. The story's emotional connection to the consequences of war becomes stronger as Rambo continues to think about the soldiers who never returned home. His own experiences have taught him that war does not end when the fighting stops. The memories remain, and for the forgotten prisoners, the suffering continues every day. Rambo understands this better than most people, and his mission becomes an attempt to prevent another soldier from disappearing into history. By rescuing the prisoner, he is also standing up for everyone who was left behind. The contrast between Rambo and the officials controlling the mission becomes increasingly dramatic. The officials can make decisions from a safe distance, but Rambo must face the consequences directly. They may view the prisoner as a political problem, while Rambo sees him as a human being who deserves freedom. This difference explains why Rambo is willing to disobey orders. He is not rebelling simply because he dislikes authority. He is making a moral choice because he believes that following the wrong order would make him responsible for another person's suffering. As the enemy search intensifies, Rambo begins to realize that his escape may require a dangerous final push. He studies the environment, considers the possible routes, and prepares himself for the possibility of a major fight. His calmness remains impressive because the circumstances would cause most people to panic. Rambo knows that fear will not solve the problem, so he focuses on what he can control. His ability to stay mentally strong becomes just as important as his physical abilities. Cobayo's presence also gives the story an emotional sense of hope. Rambo has spent much of his life believing that he must survive alone, but his connection with her suggests that he is still capable of forming meaningful relationships. His concern for her shows that the war did not completely destroy his humanity. Even after everything he has experienced, he is still willing to care for another person. This makes his journey more than a simple revenge story. It is also about rediscovering trust and purpose. By the end of this part, the danger has reached an extremely high level. The enemy is close, the prisoner remains vulnerable, and the possibility of escape is becoming smaller. Rambo knows that he may soon have to fight through overwhelming opposition, but he refuses to surrender. His mission has become a symbol of loyalty to forgotten soldiers and a rejection of the idea that human lives can be sacrificed for convenience. He is prepared to take the final risks necessary to protect the people who depend on him, and the story now moves toward an even more intense confrontation where Rambo's courage, strategy, and determination will be tested to their absolute limits. Rambo's mission reaches an extremely dangerous stage as the enemy finally begins closing the distance and the possibility of remaining hidden becomes almost impossible. Rambo understands that the situation has changed completely. He is no longer simply trying to move quietly through the jungle, he is preparing himself for a confrontation that could determine whether the prisoner survives or is captured again. Despite the pressure, Rambo remains focused and refuses to panic. His experience has taught him that fear can be more dangerous than the enemy itself, so he carefully observes his surroundings and waits for the right opportunity to act. The prisoner continues to depend on him, and this responsibility gives Rambo the determination to keep going even though he knows the odds are against him. Rambo's mission has become personal because he believes that leaving the prisoner behind would repeat the same injustice that has already taken years of the man's life. He sees the prisoner as a symbol of every soldier who was forgotten after the war, and this makes Rambo unwilling to surrender. Cobayo remains an important part of his journey, and her courage continues to strengthen his resolve. She has chosen to stay beside him despite the danger, and Rambo's concern for her safety shows that his emotional connection to her has become stronger. For a man who has spent years isolated from society, trusting another person is a significant step. Their relationship adds emotional weight to the story because Rambo now has more than one person to protect. At the same time, the betrayal from his own side becomes impossible to ignore. Rambo understands that the people controlling the mission may have wanted information rather than a genuine rescue, and his decision to save the prisoner has made him a threat to their plans. This creates a powerful conflict between the soldier on the ground and the people making decisions from a distance. Rambo has been trained to obey orders, but he now realizes that obedience can sometimes lead to the abandonment of innocent people. He chooses to follow his conscience instead. This decision demonstrates that his loyalty is ultimately directed toward the soldiers who depend on him rather than toward the officials who control the mission. The jungle becomes increasingly dangerous as enemy patrols move closer. Rambo uses the terrain carefully, taking advantage of dense vegetation and difficult pathways to make himself harder to find. He understands that his enemies have greater numbers, so he cannot afford to fight them all at once. Instead, he relies on patience, stealth, and tactical thinking. His ability to remain calm under pressure makes him a formidable opponent, but the increasing number of enemies suggests that a direct battle may soon be unavoidable. The physical demands of the mission continue to test Rambo. He is exhausted from constant movement and danger, yet he refuses to stop. His body may be reaching its limits, but his mind remains focused on the objective. He knows that if he gives up, the prisoner may lose his only chance of freedom. This belief gives him the strength to continue. Rambo's determination is therefore not simply physical, it is emotional and moral. He is willing to sacrifice himself because he believes that another person's life is worth the risk. The story also continues to explore Rambo's relationship with his own past. Returning to Vietnam forces him to confront memories of war that have shaped his identity. The jungle represents both his greatest fears and his greatest abilities. It is a place where he understands how to survive, but it is also a reminder of the experiences that left him emotionally isolated. The rescue mission allows him to confront those memories in a new way. Instead of fighting simply because he was ordered to, he is fighting because he has chosen to protect someone. This gives his actions a sense of purpose that he may not have had before. As the enemy gets closer, Rambo begins preparing for the possibility of a major confrontation. He understands that stealth may soon be impossible, so he carefully considers how to protect the prisoner if fighting begins. His strategy remains focused on creating an escape opportunity rather than simply defeating the enemy. Rambo knows that survival depends on using every advantage available to him, and he refuses to underestimate his opponents. The suspense becomes stronger because the audience can feel that the situation is approaching a breaking point. The contrast between Rambo and the officials behind the mission becomes even clearer. They are concerned with political consequences, while Rambo is concerned with a human life standing directly in front of him. He refuses to accept that the prisoner can be sacrificed for convenience. His actions therefore become a challenge to the system itself. He is proving that responsibility belongs to the person who is willing to face the consequences, not simply to the person who has the authority to give orders. Rambo's courage is also shown through his willingness to continue despite knowing that he may not survive. He does not believe that he is invincible. He understands the risks, but he chooses to face them because he believes the mission is worth completing. This makes his character more powerful because his bravery comes from accepting fear rather than pretending that fear does not exist. The jungle's atmosphere becomes increasingly tense as the enemy search continues. Every distant sound could mean that the enemy has found them, and every moment of silence feels temporary. Rambo remains alert and ready, knowing that the next few decisions could determine everything. He continues to protect the prisoner and watches carefully over County Bow, refusing to allow either of them to become helpless. By the end of this part, Rambo has reached a point where the possibility of direct combat is almost unavoidable. The enemy is closing in, his resources are limited, and the official support he once expected has disappeared. Yet his determination remains unbroken. He has chosen his path, and now he is prepared to face the consequences. The rescue has become a fight for freedom, dignity, and the right of forgotten soldiers to be remembered. Rambo's journey continues toward an explosive confrontation, and the next stage promises to test every skill, emotion, and ounce of courage he possesses. The situation becomes even more intense as Rambo realizes that the enemy has nearly discovered their position, leaving him with very little time to find a safe way forward. He knows that the prisoner cannot move quickly enough to escape a large force, so Rambo must carefully plan every step while remaining prepared for an attack. His experience tells him that panic would be dangerous, and he continues to observe the jungle with complete concentration. The environment is filled with thick vegetation, difficult paths, and hidden dangers, but Rambo uses these conditions to his advantage. He understands how to move quietly, how to read the terrain, and how to remain almost invisible when necessary. His greatest strength is his ability to stay calm when everything around him is falling apart. The prisoner has become Rambo's responsibility, and he refuses to treat that responsibility lightly. He knows that this man has already spent years waiting for someone to come back for him, and Rambo cannot accept the idea of leaving him behind again. His determination gives the rescue mission an emotional purpose that goes far beyond military orders. Rambo is fighting for a person who has been forgotten, and in doing so he is also fighting against the belief that some soldiers are simply expendable. Kobao remains beside Rambo despite the increasing danger. Her courage and loyalty continue to give him emotional support, and Rambo's concern for her safety becomes stronger. He knows that she has placed herself in danger because of him, and he does not want her to pay the price for his decision. Their connection makes the situation more emotional because Rambo has finally found someone he can trust after spending so much of his life isolated. The relationship also reveals that Rambo is capable of hope despite everything he has experienced. Meanwhile, the enemy continues to close the distance. Rambo understands that hiding will eventually become impossible, and he begins preparing for the possibility of a direct confrontation. He does not want to fight unless necessary, but he is ready to protect the prisoner if the enemy discovers them. His approach remains strategic rather than reckless. He watches, waits, and studies the movements of his opponents, looking for weaknesses that can give him an advantage. The story's tension grows because the audience can sense that the quiet moments will not last forever. The possibility of betrayal from Rambo's own side also becomes more serious. He now understands that the people behind the mission may have deliberately avoided rescuing the prisoners, and his decision to continue the rescue has made him a threat to their plans. This realization creates a painful conflict because Rambo has spent his life serving the military, yet he now finds himself fighting against decisions made by people within the same system. His response is to follow his own moral judgment. He believes that an order cannot justify abandoning a human being who can still be saved. This makes his actions a powerful statement about responsibility. Rambo's loyalty is not simply to an organization. It is to the people who stood beside him during war and to those who were left behind. The physical demands of the mission continue to increase. Rambo is exhausted, but he must remain alert because the prisoner depends on him. Every movement through the jungle requires effort, and the constant threat of enemy patrols prevents him from resting properly. Yet his mental determination remains stronger than his physical fatigue. He knows that if he stops, the entire rescue attempt could fail. His willingness to continue despite exhaustion demonstrates the strength of his character. The jungle also becomes a symbol of the psychological world Rambo has been trapped in since the war. It is a place where he understands the rules, where his survival skills make sense, but it is also connected to memories of violence and loss. Returning to this environment forces him to confront the past, but the rescue mission gives him a new purpose. He is no longer simply fighting because he was trained to fight. He is choosing to fight for someone else. This transformation makes his character more meaningful. As the enemy search intensifies, Rambo begins to consider the possibility that the only way forward may involve a major confrontation. He knows that the enemy has the advantage in numbers, but he also knows that they may underestimate him. Rambo's ability to remain unpredictable gives him an opportunity to survive. He studies the terrain, prepares himself mentally, and waits for the right moment. The suspense comes from knowing that the confrontation is approaching but not knowing exactly how it will unfold. Rambo's priority remains protecting the prisoner in County Bao. Even when he has opportunities to focus entirely on his own survival, he continues to think about the people with him. This willingness to put others before himself demonstrates the depth of his character. He may be portrayed as a powerful warrior, but his most important quality is his sense of responsibility. The story also emphasizes the difference between physical freedom and emotional freedom. The prisoner has been physically trapped for years, while Rambo has been emotionally trapped by the memories of war. By trying to rescue the prisoner, Rambo is also confronting his own past. Saving another soldier gives him a chance to prove that the war does not have to define every decision he makes. He can choose compassion instead of abandonment. As this section approaches its conclusion, the danger becomes almost unavoidable. The enemy is getting closer, Rambo's resources are limited, and the people behind the mission cannot be trusted. Yet he refuses to surrender. His determination has become stronger than his fear, and he is prepared to take whatever risk is necessary to protect the prisoner. The story now stands on the edge of a major confrontation, with Rambo ready to face overwhelming odds rather than allow another soldier to be forgotten. His journey continues to represent courage, loyalty, sacrifice, and the powerful belief that no soldier should be abandoned when there is still a chance to bring him home. Rambo's mission reaches a crucial stage as the pressure surrounding him becomes almost impossible to escape. The enemy has tightened its search, the jungle is becoming increasingly dangerous, and Rambo understands that his opportunity to move the prisoner safely is disappearing. Yet even under these circumstances, he refuses to abandon his objective. His determination is no longer based on military orders but on a personal promise to the prisoner and to the soldiers who were forgotten. Rambo knows that the man beside him has already suffered enough, and he is unwilling to allow the same injustice to happen again. Every step through the jungle requires careful attention. Rambo studies the terrain, listens for enemy movement, and uses natural cover to remain hidden. His survival instincts have become his greatest advantage, allowing him to move through difficult areas while avoiding unnecessary confrontation. He understands that the enemy has more soldiers and resources, so fighting everyone directly would be a mistake. Instead, he relies on patience, strategy, and his knowledge of the environment. This makes the journey feel like a constant battle of intelligence rather than simply a contest of physical strength. The prisoner remains vulnerable, and Rambo's responsibility becomes heavier with every passing moment. He knows that if he is captured, the prisoner could be lost again. This possibility motivates him to continue even when exhaustion begins to affect him. Rambo's physical strength is impressive, but his mental determination is even more important. He refuses to allow fear or fatigue to decide what happens next. His focus remains on getting the prisoner out of danger. Kobau continues to support Rambo, and her presence adds another emotional layer to the story. She has chosen to remain with him despite knowing how dangerous the situation has become. Rambo's concern for her safety becomes increasingly clear, showing that he has developed genuine feelings of trust and affection. For a man who has spent so much of his life isolated from others, this relationship represents something rare. It gives him a reason to think beyond the mission itself and reminds him that there are still people capable of caring about him. At the same time, Rambo begins to understand that his own side may be just as dangerous as the enemy. The people controlling the mission have shown little interest in actually rescuing the prisoners, and Rambo realizes that his discovery has created a political problem for them. They may want the evidence hidden, but Rambo refuses to cooperate. His decision to continue the rescue becomes an act of defiance against a system that he believes has failed its soldiers. This conflict gives the story greater emotional depth because Rambo is no longer simply fighting for survival. He is fighting for the principle that abandoned soldiers still deserve to be rescued. The jungle continues to play an important role in the tension. Its dense vegetation provides cover, but it also creates uncertainty. Rambo cannot always see where the enemy is located, and every sound could indicate approaching danger. He must constantly remain alert and ready to change direction. His ability to adapt keeps him alive, but the pressure continues to build because the enemy is gradually learning how he moves. The possibility of discovery becomes more likely with every passing moment. As the chase continues, Rambo's memories of war become increasingly connected to his current mission. He understands the psychological pain of soldiers who are forgotten after the fighting ends. He has experienced the loneliness and misunderstanding that can follow a war, and this gives him a unique connection to the prisoner. Rambo's actions therefore become more than a rescue. They are an attempt to prove that the sacrifices of soldiers still have meaning. He cannot change what happened years ago, but he can make a different choice now. This emotional motivation makes his determination more powerful. The action becomes increasingly intense as the enemy moves closer. Rambo knows that eventually he may have to stop running and fight. He prepares himself for that possibility while continuing to protect the prisoner. His strategy remains focused on survival rather than revenge. Even though he has been betrayed, he does not allow anger to control his decisions. He knows that the prisoner and County Bow are depending on him, and this responsibility forces him to remain disciplined. This is one of the strongest aspects of his character. Rambo may be surrounded by violence, but his actions are guided by a clear moral purpose. The contrast between Rambo and the people in control becomes sharper. They have the authority to send soldiers into dangerous situations, but they do not experience the consequences directly. Rambo, however, is forced to confront those consequences with his own eyes. He sees the prisoner, understands his suffering, and chooses to act. This makes Rambo's decision to disobey more understandable because he is responding to a human reality that cannot be reduced to a report or political calculation. As the situation becomes more desperate, Rambo searches for a way to turn the enemy's strength against them. He knows that a direct confrontation would be extremely dangerous, so he continues looking for an advantage. His patience and knowledge of survival remain crucial. He waits for the right moment, watches the enemy carefully, and prepares himself for whatever comes next. The story builds suspense by showing that Rambo is surrounded by danger but still searching for a way to survive. The emotional stakes continue to rise because the consequences of failure are now much greater. If Rambo fails, the prisoner could disappear again, County Bow could be killed, and the truth about the abandoned soldiers could remain hidden. Rambo therefore understands that he has no choice but to keep moving forward. His determination becomes almost unstoppable because he believes that surrender would be worse than death. By the end of this part, Rambo is approaching a major turning point. The enemy is closing in, the escape route is becoming more difficult, and the possibility of direct confrontation is almost certain. Yet Rambo remains prepared. He has survived war, betrayal, isolation, and countless dangers, and now he is willing to face whatever comes next to protect the people who depend on him. His mission has become a powerful story about loyalty, sacrifice, courage, and the refusal to abandon those who have been forgotten, setting the stage for an even more intense continuation. The pressure reaches another dangerous level as Rambo realizes that the enemy is getting closer and that his chances of escaping with the prisoner are becoming increasingly limited. He remains focused on the mission, refusing to allow exhaustion, fear, or betrayal to distract him from his objective. Every movement through the jungle is carefully considered because Rambo understands that one mistake could expose their position. His military experience allows him to recognize the signs of approaching danger, and he continues using the environment to remain hidden for as long as possible. The prisoner is still depending on Rambo, and this responsibility gives him a reason to keep moving even when his own strength is beginning to weaken. Rambo knows that this man has already spent years suffering in captivity, and the thought of leaving him behind again is unacceptable. What began as a military assignment has now become a personal commitment, and Rambo is willing to risk his own life to keep that commitment. Kobau continues to remain close to him, and her courage gives the journey an emotional dimension that balances the intense action. Rambo has lived much of his life as an isolated man, but his relationship with County Bow shows that he is still capable of trust and affection. He becomes increasingly concerned about her safety because he knows that she has become involved in a conflict far more dangerous than she originally expected. Her loyalty also gives Rambo another reason to survive. He is no longer fighting only for himself or the prisoner, he is trying to protect someone who has chosen to stand beside him. Meanwhile, the betrayal from the people behind the mission becomes more obvious. Rambo realizes that the officials who sent him into the jungle may have wanted information rather than an actual rescue. The discovery of the prisoner has created a problem that they would rather control than solve, and Rambo's refusal to cooperate with their wishes makes him a threat. This realization is painful because Rambo has spent years believing in military duty, yet he now finds himself questioning the intentions of the people who are supposed to be on his side. Instead of allowing the betrayal to destroy his motivation, he turns it into determination. He believes that the prisoner deserves freedom regardless of political consequences. The jungle remains the perfect environment for the growing tension. Thick vegetation hides both Rambo and his enemies, while difficult paths and unpredictable conditions make movement dangerous. Rambo uses these elements to his advantage, but he knows that his opponents are also adapting. The longer the chase continues, the more likely it becomes that they will eventually be forced into direct confrontation. Rambo therefore studies the terrain and searches for a route that will give them the best chance of survival. His decisions are based on experience rather than impulse, and this makes his survival feel believable within the story. As the enemy search becomes more aggressive, Rambo is forced to think about what will happen if they are discovered. He knows that the prisoner could be captured again, and County Bow could also become a target. This possibility makes him even more determined to keep them moving. He understands that he cannot protect everyone by fighting every enemy directly, so he focuses on creating opportunities to escape. His patience becomes a weapon. The story also continues to explore Rambo's emotional connection to the prisoners and the soldiers who were forgotten after the war. His own experiences have taught him that the physical end of a war does not mean the emotional suffering disappears. For those left behind, the war continues every day. Rambo understands this because he has carried his own memories and pain for years. His decision to rescue the prisoner is therefore partly about refusing to allow another soldier to suffer alone. It is a powerful expression of empathy from a character who rarely speaks about his emotions. The action becomes more intense as Rambo's options become fewer. He must remain alert while dealing with exhaustion and the constant pressure of pursuit. Yet his determination continues to overcome his physical limitations. He knows that if he stops, everything he has risked will have been for nothing. His ability to continue under extreme circumstances is one of the qualities that make him such a compelling character. He is not simply strong. He has an extraordinary ability to keep moving when there seems to be no reason to hope. The contrast between Rambo and the officials behind the operation becomes increasingly important. The officials appear to view the situation through the lens of politics and military strategy, while Rambo sees it through the eyes of a soldier. To him, the prisoner is not a political problem but a human being who deserves to come home. This difference creates the central moral conflict of the story. Rambo's actions challenge the idea that soldiers can be sacrificed for convenience, and his refusal to obey questionable orders becomes a statement about personal responsibility. As the danger grows, Rambo begins preparing for the possibility that stealth will no longer be enough. He knows that if the enemy discovers their location, he may have to fight his way toward safety. Even then, his priority remains protecting the prisoner in County Bow. He is willing to take the greatest risks himself so that others have a better chance of surviving. This willingness to sacrifice himself shows how much his character has changed during the mission. He entered the jungle as a soldier following instructions, but he is now acting as a protector who has chosen his own purpose. The atmosphere remains tense because the audience can feel that the story is approaching a major turning point. Rambo's enemies are getting closer. His physical resources are limited, and the people behind the mission may be working against him. Yet he continues forward with determination. The possibility of failure is always present, but Rambo refuses to let that possibility decide his actions. He believes that the attempt to save the prisoner is worth the risk. By the end of this part, Rambo has reached another critical moment. The chase is becoming more dangerous, the enemy is closing in, and the possibility of a peaceful escape is almost gone. Rambo understands that he may soon have to face the enemy directly, but he remains ready. His loyalty to the prisoner, his concern for County Bow, and his refusal to accept betrayal continue to drive him forward. The story is now preparing for a much larger confrontation in which Rambo will be forced to use everything he has learned to protect the people depending on him and fight for the freedom they deserve. The situation becomes even more intense as Rambo realizes that the enemy is closing in from multiple directions and that his opportunity to escape with the prisoner is becoming smaller. He remains calm despite the pressure, carefully studying the surrounding jungle and looking for a way to stay ahead of the pursuing forces. Rambo knows that the enemy has more soldiers and equipment, but he also knows that the jungle gives him an advantage because he understands how to move through it without being easily detected. His experience allows him to remain patient, choosing each step carefully instead of rushing into unnecessary danger. The prisoner continues to depend on him, and Rambo's determination to bring him home becomes stronger with every obstacle. He refuses to see the man as simply part of a military assignment because he understands the years of suffering and isolation he has endured. For Rambo, rescuing him is now a matter of honor and responsibility. He knows that if he abandons the prisoner, he will become part of the same system that allowed these soldiers to be forgotten. This is why he continues forward even when the situation seems impossible. Ko Bao remains close to Rambo, and their relationship continues to develop through the dangerous journey. She understands his determination and recognizes that he is willing to risk everything for the prisoner. Rambo's concern for her safety also becomes increasingly important because he knows that the enemy could use her to reach him. His normally emotionless behavior begins to reveal genuine care, making his character feel more human. He has spent so much of his life isolated from others that this connection becomes especially meaningful. At the same time, the betrayal from Rambo's own side becomes harder to ignore. He realizes that the people controlling the mission may have deliberately prevented a real rescue from taking place. Their concern appears to be about avoiding political problems rather than protecting the soldiers who were left behind. Rambo's discovery has therefore made him dangerous to the people who wanted the truth hidden. Instead of obeying their wishes, he chooses to expose the reality through his actions. His decision creates a powerful conflict between authority and morality. Rambo understands that military orders are supposed to provide direction, but he also understands that blindly following orders can sometimes result in innocent people being abandoned. His choice to protect the prisoner demonstrates that loyalty to another human being can be stronger than loyalty to an organization. The jungle becomes increasingly hostile as the enemy search intensifies. Rambo uses every available advantage, including natural cover, darkness, difficult terrain, and his knowledge of movement through the environment. He understands that direct combat against a much larger force would be dangerous, so he focuses on survival and timing. His ability to remain hidden creates suspense because the audience knows that the enemy is nearby even when Rambo appears to be alone. Every quiet moment feels temporary, as though the next sound could signal the beginning of another confrontation. The physical demands of the mission continue to push Rambo toward his limits. He has been fighting, moving, and protecting others under extreme conditions, yet he refuses to stop. His determination becomes almost stronger than his physical exhaustion. He knows that the prisoner may not survive if he gives up, and that knowledge keeps him moving. Rambo's strength therefore comes not only from his body but from his sense of purpose. The story also explores how deeply the war has affected Rambo's identity. Returning to Vietnam forces him to confront memories that he has tried to suppress, but the mission gives him an opportunity to respond differently to the suffering around him. Instead of simply remembering the soldiers who were lost, he now has the chance to save one. This gives his actions a sense of personal meaning and emotional redemption. He cannot change the past, but he can refuse to repeat it. As the enemy continues to search, Rambo begins to understand that the time for quiet movement may soon be over. He prepares himself for a larger confrontation while still trying to find a safe path for the prisoner. His strategy remains focused on protecting others rather than seeking revenge. Even though he has every reason to be angry at the people who betrayed him, he does not allow that anger to distract him from his objective. This restraint makes his character more powerful because it shows that his actions are driven by responsibility rather than hatred. The contrast between Rambo and the officials controlling the operation becomes increasingly clear. They are concerned with orders, reports, and political consequences, while Rambo is concerned with the actual human being standing beside him. He sees the prisoner as someone who deserves freedom, not as a problem that needs to be hidden. This difference in perspective drives the story forward and explains why Rambo is willing to risk everything. The atmosphere becomes more tense as the possibility of capture grows. Rambo understands that if the enemy catches them, the prisoner may be lost again and the truth may disappear. He therefore continues searching for an opportunity to move before the situation becomes impossible. His patience and survival instincts remain crucial, but the growing number of enemies suggests that a major confrontation may soon be unavoidable. By the end of this section, Rambo's mission has become a personal battle against abandonment and betrayal. He has lost faith in the people who sent him, but he has gained an even stronger belief in the responsibility he feels toward the prisoner in County Bao. The enemy is closing in, the jungle offers fewer places to hide, and the pressure is reaching its highest point. Rambo knows that the next decision could determine everything, but he remains ready to continue because he refuses to abandon the people who have placed their trust in him. Rambo's situation becomes more dangerous as the enemy continues to close in, and the possibility of completing the rescue without a major confrontation begins to disappear. He has already sacrificed his safety to protect the prisoner, and now he understands that there may be no easy way back. Still, Rambo remains focused because he knows that giving up would mean leaving another soldier behind. His determination is stronger than his exhaustion, and his military instincts continue to guide him through the dangerous jungle. He carefully observes the surrounding area, searches for signs of enemy movement, and uses every natural advantage available to him. The jungle is difficult to navigate, but Rambo's experience allows him to move with confidence. He knows that his enemies may have greater numbers, but they cannot easily match his ability to disappear into the environment and strike only when necessary. As the pressure increases, Rambo becomes more aware that his mission has become a direct challenge to the people who wanted to keep the truth hidden. The prisoner is living proof that soldiers were left behind, and Rambo's determination to bring him home threatens to expose the decisions made by those in control. This realization adds another layer of danger because Rambo is no longer simply fighting an enemy army. He is also fighting against a system that appears willing to sacrifice individuals to avoid responsibility. Rambo's response is to refuse cooperation with that betrayal. He chooses to trust his own moral judgment, believing that protecting the prisoner is more important than following instructions that would leave him behind. Ko-Bao remains an important part of Rambo's journey. Her courage and loyalty continue to give him emotional support, and Rambo's concern for her safety shows how much their relationship has developed. He has spent years living as an isolated man, but Bao gives him a reason to care about someone beyond the immediate mission. Their connection makes the danger more emotional because Rambo knows that his decisions could place her life at risk. At the same time, the prisoner continues to depend on Rambo for protection. Rambo understands that the man has already suffered enough and that his rescue is worth every risk. He does not treat him as a burden, even though protecting another person makes escape much more difficult. Instead, Rambo accepts the responsibility completely. This is one of the strongest qualities of his character because he is willing to sacrifice his own safety for someone who has no other way out. The enemy search becomes more aggressive, and Rambo realizes that hiding will soon become impossible. He begins preparing for a direct confrontation while looking for the best opportunity to move. His strategy remains careful and controlled. He does not waste energy fighting every enemy he encounters. Instead, he waits, observes, and chooses his moments. This makes the suspense stronger because the audience understands that Rambo is constantly calculating the risks around him. The physical challenges also continue to increase. The difficult terrain, exhaustion, and constant pressure make the journey harder, yet Rambo refuses to stop. His body may be tired, but his mind remains focused on the objective. He knows that if he allows exhaustion to control him, the prisoner could be captured again. His determination therefore becomes a source of strength. The story's emotional themes become increasingly clear as Rambo's journey continues. His return to the battlefield forces him to confront the painful memories of war, but instead of allowing those memories to defeat him, he uses them to understand the prisoner. Rambo knows what it means to feel abandoned and misunderstood, and he refuses to allow another soldier to experience the same fate if he can prevent it. In this sense, the rescue becomes a personal form of redemption. Rambo cannot change the past, but he can choose to protect someone in the present. The contrast between Rambo and the people controlling the operation remains one of the most important elements of the story. The officials have the power to give orders, but they are far away from the consequences of those decisions. Rambo, meanwhile, is the person forced to face the danger directly. His actions suggest that true responsibility belongs to the person willing to accept the consequences of difficult choices. Rambo's refusal to abandon the prisoner therefore becomes a powerful rejection of political convenience. As the enemy closes in, the possibility of a peaceful escape becomes smaller. Rambo prepares himself for the battle that may be unavoidable, but he remains focused on protecting the people around him. His courage is not presented as fearlessness, rather, he understands the danger and continues anyway. This makes his determination feel more realistic and emotionally powerful. Every step forward represents a decision to keep fighting despite the possibility of failure. The jungle continues to create an atmosphere of uncertainty. Hidden paths, thick vegetation, darkness, and distant sounds keep everyone on edge. Rambo understands how to use these conditions, but he also knows that the enemy is becoming more familiar with his movements. This creates a growing sense that the advantage he has enjoyed may soon disappear. The story gradually moves toward a larger confrontation where Rambo will have to rely on everything he has learned throughout his military career. By the end of this part, Rambo has reached a point where his choices have completely separated him from the official mission. He is now acting according to his own sense of duty, protecting the prisoner because he believes it is the right thing to do. His trust in the people behind the operation has almost disappeared, but his loyalty to the abandoned soldiers remains stronger than ever. The enemy is closing in, the danger is increasing, and the next stage of the journey promises to push Rambo to the limits of his physical and emotional endurance. Rambo's mission reaches another critical stage as the danger around him continues to increase and the possibility of returning safely becomes more uncertain. He has already gone far beyond the instructions he was given because he refuses to leave the prisoner behind, and this decision now places him directly in the path of powerful enemies. Rambo understands that he may no longer have the support of the people who sent him into the jungle, but he remains determined to complete what he believes is the right thing. His focus is no longer on simply surviving the mission. It is on protecting the prisoner and making sure that the truth about the forgotten soldiers cannot be ignored. Moving through the jungle, Rambo carefully studies every detail around him. He knows that enemy forces are searching for him, so he avoids unnecessary movement and uses the natural environment as cover. His patience and discipline continue to be among his greatest strengths. Instead of rushing toward danger, he waits for the right moment and carefully considers the consequences of every decision. The prisoner remains vulnerable, making Rambo even more cautious. He knows that one mistake could expose their location and put the entire rescue effort at risk. His responsibility becomes heavier with every passing moment, but he refuses to abandon the man. This determination shows that Rambo's idea of heroism is not about winning a battle or defeating an enemy. It is about refusing to leave someone behind when there is still a chance to save them. Kobao remains an important part of the journey, and her courage continues to influence Rambo. She has placed herself in danger by helping him, yet she refuses to walk away. Rambo's concern for her safety becomes increasingly visible, revealing the emotional side of a character who usually hides his feelings behind silence and discipline. Their connection gives Rambo something he has rarely had since the war: someone he can trust and someone who believes in his decisions. However, the danger surrounding them continues to grow. Enemy patrols become more active, and Rambo realizes that remaining hidden will not be possible forever. He begins preparing for the possibility of direct confrontation while continuing to search for an escape route. His survival strategy remains based on using the environment, avoiding predictable movements, and choosing the right moment to act. Even when he is physically exhausted, his mind remains sharp because he knows that the lives of others depend on his decisions. The betrayal from his own side becomes increasingly painful. Rambo begins to understand that the people controlling the operation may be more concerned about avoiding political consequences than rescuing the prisoners. The discovery of a living American prisoner has created a problem for them, and Rambo's refusal to abandon that prisoner threatens to expose their decisions. This creates a powerful conflict between Rambo and the people who were supposed to be his allies. He realizes that the system may have trained him to fight, but it does not necessarily want him to question its decisions. Rambo's choice to continue the rescue therefore becomes an act of independence. He is no longer willing to accept that authority automatically means morality. He believes that a human life should matter more than an official order. This theme gives the story greater emotional depth and makes Rambo's actions more meaningful. The jungle continues to provide an intense survival atmosphere. The dense vegetation limits visibility, the difficult terrain slows movement, and the constant threat of enemy patrols prevents Rambo from relaxing. He must remain alert every second. Yet he also understands how to use the environment to his advantage. His experience allows him to move through places where his pursuers struggle to follow, giving him opportunities to create distance. His ability to adapt demonstrates that his greatest weapon is his knowledge and experience rather than simple physical strength. The emotional consequences of the mission also become increasingly clear. Rambo has returned to a place connected to some of the most painful memories of his life. The jungle reminds him of war, loss, and the loneliness that followed. Yet his decision to rescue the prisoner gives him a new purpose. He cannot undo the past, but he can make a different choice in the present. Instead of accepting another soldier's abandonment, he chooses to fight for that person's freedom. This decision makes the mission feel like a personal attempt to correct something that has haunted him for years. As enemy forces continue to close in, Rambo knows that a major confrontation is approaching. He prepares himself mentally for the possibility that he will have to fight through overwhelming opposition. Even then, he remains focused on protecting the prisoner rather than seeking revenge. His actions show that he has a strong sense of responsibility despite everything that has happened to him. The story continues to build suspense by placing Rambo in situations where there seems to be no easy solution. Every possible escape route carries risks, and every decision could have serious consequences. Yet Rambo continues moving forward because he believes that giving up would be worse than facing the danger. His courage comes from accepting the possibility of failure while still choosing to act. By the end of this part, the mission has reached a point where Rambo can no longer depend on stealth alone. The enemy is getting closer, the prisoner remains in danger, and the people behind the operation appear increasingly determined to control the situation. Rambo understands that the next stage may require him to use everything he has learned as a soldier. Despite exhaustion, betrayal, and overwhelming odds, he remains committed to his purpose. His journey continues to represent loyalty, sacrifice, courage, survival, and the refusal to forget those who were left behind, setting the stage for an even more intense confrontation ahead. Rambo's situation becomes even more dangerous as the possibility of a safe escape begins to disappear, forcing him to confront the consequences of his decision to rescue the prisoner. He understands that the enemy is no longer simply searching for an unknown intruder. They are actively hunting him, and every moment increases the risk for everyone involved. Rambo remains focused despite the pressure, carefully observing the jungle and using his survival skills to stay ahead of the forces pursuing him. His experience allows him to recognize danger before it becomes visible, and he continues to make calculated decisions rather than allowing fear or anger to control him. The prisoner has become the central reason for everything Rambo is doing, and his determination to protect him demonstrates how deeply Rambo believes in loyalty. He knows that the man has already suffered for years, and the thought of abandoning him again is something Rambo cannot accept. This emotional commitment makes the mission much more than a military assignment. It becomes a personal promise that Rambo is determined to keep regardless of the consequences. Kobao remains an important part of the journey, and her courage continues to strengthen Rambo's determination. Their relationship has developed through danger, trust, and shared experiences, and Rambo's concern for her safety reveals a side of him that is rarely visible. He may appear emotionally distant, but his actions show that he still values human connection. The danger surrounding County Bao also makes Rambo more cautious because he understands that his enemies may use the people close to him to reach him. As the enemy search becomes more aggressive, Rambo is forced to make increasingly difficult choices. The jungle offers places to hide, but it also creates obstacles that can slow down the escape. Rambo must balance speed with caution, always thinking about the safety of the prisoner. His ability to adapt to changing circumstances becomes essential. He knows that a predictable strategy will eventually fail, so he remains flexible and ready to change direction whenever the situation demands it. The film continues to develop the theme of betrayal as Rambo realizes that the people who sent him into the jungle may have never expected him to rescue the prisoners. The evidence he discovered has created a political problem, and instead of receiving support, he finds himself increasingly isolated. This betrayal is especially painful because Rambo has dedicated much of his life to military service. He believed that serving his country meant protecting the people beside him, yet the people in charge now appear willing to sacrifice those same soldiers for convenience. Rambo's response is not to abandon his principles but to follow them more strongly. He believes that a soldier's life cannot be reduced to a political calculation. This makes his decision to continue the rescue an act of moral courage. The physical challenges of the mission also become more demanding. Rambo is exhausted, surrounded by enemies, and forced to carry responsibility for others while constantly moving through dangerous territory. Yet his endurance remains remarkable. He continues because he knows that stopping would give the enemy control over the outcome. His determination is not based on the belief that he cannot lose. Instead, it comes from the belief that he must try regardless of how difficult the situation becomes. The tension increases as enemy forces get closer, creating the sense that a major confrontation is approaching. Rambo begins preparing for the possibility that stealth will no longer be enough. He understands that if he is forced into open conflict, he will have to rely on everything he has learned during his military career. However, even while preparing for battle, his priority remains protecting the prisoner rather than seeking revenge. This distinction is important because it shows that Rambo's actions are motivated by responsibility rather than hatred. The story also continues to explore the psychological impact of war on Rambo. His return to the battlefield brings memories that remain deeply connected to his identity. He has learned how to survive physically, but emotional healing has been much more difficult. The rescue mission gives him a chance to confront some of those memories by doing something he believes is meaningful. He cannot change the past, but he can refuse to repeat the mistakes that caused so much suffering. His willingness to risk himself for another soldier becomes a form of personal redemption. The jungle environment continues to create suspense through its unpredictability. Darkness, rain, dense vegetation, and hidden paths make every movement uncertain. Rambo must remain alert because the enemy could be nearby even when everything appears quiet. These moments of silence create tension because the audience understands that danger is always waiting. The story successfully uses this atmosphere to make Rambo's journey feel like a continuous survival challenge rather than a simple series of action scenes. As the part progresses, Rambo becomes increasingly aware that the people controlling the mission may try to erase the evidence he has discovered. This possibility makes his escape even more urgent. If he fails, the prisoner could remain forgotten and the truth could disappear. Rambo therefore feels responsible not only for saving a life but also for exposing what happened. His determination becomes stronger because he knows that returning empty-handed would allow the same injustice to continue. The emotional conflict between obedience and morality remains at the center of the story. Rambo has been trained to follow commands, but his experiences have taught him that true loyalty sometimes requires making difficult choices. He chooses to protect the prisoner because he believes that is what a soldier should do. This decision places him against powerful forces, but it also gives him a sense of purpose that he has rarely experienced since the war. By the end of this part, the tension has reached another major point. Rambo is exhausted but determined, the prisoner remains in danger, County Bayo's safety is uncertain, and the enemy is closing in. The possibility of a peaceful escape is fading, and Rambo knows that he may soon have to fight his way toward freedom. Nevertheless, he refuses to surrender. His courage, loyalty, endurance, and moral determination continue to drive the story forward, preparing the audience for an increasingly intense confrontation in the next chapter. Rambo's situation becomes increasingly desperate as the mission moves into a more dangerous phase, with the enemy tightening its search and the possibility of escape becoming smaller with every passing moment. He understands that the original mission has completely collapsed, but his determination to protect the prisoner remains stronger than ever. The man he was sent to locate is now someone Rambo feels personally responsible for, and this responsibility gives him a reason to continue even when the odds appear impossible. Moving through the jungle, Rambo remains cautious and observant, using his experience to recognize potential dangers before they become obvious. He knows that the enemy has greater numbers, better resources, and the advantage of controlling the territory, but Rambo has something equally important: patience and knowledge of survival. He uses the natural environment to hide his movements, carefully choosing when to advance and when to remain still. Every decision is made with the safety of the prisoner in mind, and this demonstrates how much Rambo's priorities have changed since the beginning of the mission. Kobau continues to stand beside him despite the increasing danger, and her presence becomes an important emotional part of the journey. Rambo has spent much of his life separated from ordinary people because of his experiences and the way society treated him after the war, but his connection with County Bao gives him a brief sense of trust and companionship. He begins to show concern for her safety, making it clear that he is no longer thinking only about his own survival. This emotional connection makes the danger much more serious because Rambo now has multiple lives to protect. The story also continues to expose the darker side of the mission. Rambo realizes that the people responsible for sending him into the jungle may have known more than they admitted. Their interest appears to be focused on controlling the consequences of the discovery rather than genuinely helping the prisoners. This creates a powerful feeling of betrayal, especially because Rambo has spent years serving the same system that is now willing to sacrifice him for political convenience. Instead of accepting this situation, Rambo decides to take matters into his own hands. His choice is not simply an act of rebellion, it is an expression of loyalty to the people who depend on him. He believes that following an order becomes meaningless when that order requires abandoning someone who can still be saved. The jungle remains an essential part of the tension. The dense vegetation makes it difficult for the enemy to see clearly, but it also makes movement slow and unpredictable. Rambo uses darkness and natural cover to remain hidden, carefully observing the movements of his pursuers. His survival skills allow him to turn the environment into a tactical advantage. Rather than confronting every enemy directly, he chooses his moments carefully, conserving his strength for situations where action becomes unavoidable. This approach makes him feel like a true survival expert rather than simply an unstoppable action hero. The emotional weight of the prisoner becomes stronger as Rambo realizes how much suffering the man has endured. His own wartime experiences allow him to understand the psychological damage caused by years of isolation and uncertainty. Rambo knows that rescuing the prisoner is not only about physical freedom, it is also about giving him back the belief that someone still cares about his life. This idea becomes one of the most powerful motivations behind Rambo's actions. He refuses to allow another soldier to become a forgotten name. At the same time, the enemy continues to close in, creating moments of intense suspense. Rambo must constantly calculate how much time he has and how much risk he can take. His exhaustion becomes increasingly noticeable, but he does not allow it to stop him. He understands that the mission will require every remaining ounce of strength and concentration. The action sequences become more meaningful because they are connected directly to his emotional goal. Every confrontation is about protecting someone, creating an escape route, or preventing the truth from being buried. Rambo's determination also highlights one of the central themes of the story: loyalty can sometimes require disobeying authority. Rambo has been trained to follow orders, but his experiences have taught him that official decisions do not always reflect moral responsibility. When the people in charge refuse to protect the prisoner, Rambo decides that he must do it himself. His courage comes from accepting the consequences of that choice. He knows that he could be punished, captured, or killed, but he continues because he believes that doing nothing would be worse. The story also presents Rambo as a man struggling with his own past. Returning to Vietnam forces him to confront memories that he has spent years trying to escape. The jungle is connected to the trauma of war, yet it is also the place where Rambo feels most capable. He may not know how to fit comfortably into normal society, but he understands how to survive in a battlefield. This contradiction makes his character tragic because the skills that make him powerful are also connected to the experiences that caused his deepest wounds. As the mission approaches another major confrontation, Rambo becomes more isolated from official support but more certain about his purpose. He no longer needs anyone to tell him what he should do. He knows that the prisoner must be protected, County Bow must be kept safe, and the truth must not disappear. His determination has transformed him from a soldier following instructions into a man acting according to his own moral code. By the end of this part, the enemy is closer than ever, the situation is becoming increasingly difficult, and Rambo understands that the peaceful escape he hoped for may no longer be possible. He prepares himself for the next stage, knowing that he may have to fight through overwhelming opposition to achieve his goal. His courage, loyalty, endurance, and refusal to abandon the people depending on him continue to drive the story forward, setting the stage for an even more intense and emotional continuation. The situation becomes even more dangerous as Rambo continues his desperate attempt to protect the prisoner while escaping the forces that are determined to stop him. At this stage, the mission has become deeply personal, because Rambo understands that the prisoner is not simply a name on a military report but a human being who has already lost years of his life. Rambo's own experiences make him understand that pain better than almost anyone else, and this is why he refuses to leave the man behind. The jungle continues to surround them with danger, and every movement requires careful planning. Rambo remains alert to every sound, shadow, and movement, using his military training to stay one step ahead of his enemies. His patience becomes especially important because rushing into a confrontation could put the prisoner at greater risk. He knows that survival depends on choosing the right moment to act rather than simply relying on physical strength. As the journey continues, Rambo's trust in the people behind the mission becomes almost non-existent. He realizes that the official operation was never as straightforward as he was led to believe, and the discovery of the prisoner has exposed a truth that powerful people may want to hide. This creates a strong emotional conflict for Rambo because he has spent his life serving his country, yet the people who are supposed to support him now appear to be more interested in protecting their own interests. Instead of allowing this betrayal to break his spirit, Rambo becomes even more determined to finish what he started. He believes that saving the prisoner is more important than following orders that would leave another soldier behind. Kobao remains an important source of support during this difficult journey. Her courage and loyalty help Rambo maintain his focus, and their growing connection gives the story a more emotional dimension. Rambo has always been portrayed as a lonely man, someone who has difficulty trusting others because of his painful past, but his relationship with County Bao shows that he still has the ability to care and connect with another person. His concern for her safety also makes the danger more personal because he knows that she is risking her life simply by helping him. Meanwhile, enemy forces continue searching for them, and the possibility of discovery becomes increasingly likely. Rambo understands that the enemy has more soldiers and resources, but he knows that numbers alone do not guarantee victory in a difficult environment. He uses the jungle as a weapon, moving through areas where his pursuers struggle to follow. His knowledge of survival tactics allows him to remain unpredictable, and this gives him an advantage despite the overwhelming odds. The film continues to demonstrate that Rambo's greatest strength is his ability to adapt. He can move silently, remain patient, and make difficult decisions even when exhaustion and fear are constantly affecting him. Every obstacle reinforces the idea that he has been shaped by years of combat, but the story also makes it clear that those experiences have come at a tremendous emotional cost. Rambo is capable of surviving almost anything physically, yet the memories of war continue to follow him. His return to Vietnam forces him to confront those memories directly, but now he has a purpose that gives them meaning. He cannot change what happened in the past, but he can make sure that one abandoned soldier is not forgotten again. The emotional weight of this decision becomes stronger as the danger increases. Rambo knows that helping the prisoner may cost him his freedom or even his life, but he accepts the risk because he believes that doing the right thing is more important than protecting himself. This sense of sacrifice is at the heart of his character. He is not motivated by wealth, fame, or revenge. His motivation comes from loyalty and responsibility. The action also becomes more intense as the enemy begins closing the distance. Rambo must constantly balance protecting the prisoner with finding a safe route. His movements become faster when necessary, but he never loses awareness of his surroundings. The tension comes from the knowledge that the slightest mistake could lead to disaster. Even in these moments, Rambo remains remarkably controlled. He understands that panic will only make the situation worse, so he focuses on the immediate objective and continues moving forward. The story's treatment of betrayal adds another layer to the conflict. Rambo begins to realize that he may have been sent into the jungle under false expectations, and now that he has discovered the truth, the people behind the mission want to control the consequences. This creates an unusual situation where Rambo must fight enemies in front of him while also questioning the intentions of people who are supposed to be on his side. The conflict becomes a battle between institutional authority and personal morality. Rambo chooses morality. He believes that saving a human life is more important than protecting an official story. This decision makes him a symbol of the forgotten soldier, someone who refuses to accept that political convenience should determine who deserves to be rescued. The cinematography and atmosphere continue to strengthen these themes. The jungle is beautiful but threatening, creating a visual contrast between nature and human conflict. Rambo moves through this environment like a shadow, constantly searching for opportunities to survive. The quiet moments create as much tension as the action because the audience knows that danger can appear at any moment. The story's pacing allows the suspense to build gradually, making the eventual confrontations feel more intense. Rambo's physical condition also becomes increasingly important. He is pushed to his limits, yet he continues because he understands that stopping could put the prisoner in greater danger. His endurance represents not only physical strength but also emotional resilience. He has survived war, rejection, and isolation, and now he is determined to survive this mission as well. By the end of this section, Rambo's objective has become clearer than ever. He is fighting to protect the prisoner, keep County Bow safe, expose the truth, and prove that the soldiers who were left behind still matter. The people controlling the operation may have abandoned their responsibility, but Rambo refuses to do the same. His determination sets the stage for an increasingly explosive confrontation, and the audience can feel that the danger surrounding him is about to reach an even higher level. The pressure surrounding Rambo reaches a new level as he continues trying to survive in hostile territory while protecting the prisoner and dealing with the consequences of the betrayal he has uncovered. By this point, Rambo understands that the original mission has effectively disappeared, and he can no longer rely on official instructions to guide him. His decisions are now based on his own sense of responsibility and his determination to save a soldier who has been forgotten for far too long. This makes the mission deeply personal, because Rambo sees the prisoner as a reminder of everything that went wrong during and after the war. The jungle remains unforgiving, with difficult terrain, limited visibility, and enemy patrols making every movement dangerous. Rambo continues to use his military experience to survive, carefully observing his surroundings and choosing his movements with patience. He understands that fighting unnecessarily would only increase the danger, so he relies on stealth and strategy whenever possible. His ability to remain calm while surrounded by threats demonstrates the difference between a trained survivor and an ordinary fighter. He does not panic when circumstances become difficult. Instead, he focuses on the next problem that must be solved. The prisoner remains Rambo's greatest responsibility. Although the rescue becomes increasingly difficult, Rambo refuses to abandon him. He knows that the prisoner has already endured years of suffering, and leaving him behind again would be something Rambo could not accept. This determination reveals a strong moral side of his personality. Beneath the quiet and intimidating exterior is a man who believes deeply in loyalty and responsibility. Kobau continues to provide important support, and the trust between her and Rambo grows stronger. Rambo has spent years keeping people at a distance, but County Bao's courage and loyalty give him a reason to open himself up slightly. Their relationship creates emotional balance within the intense action, showing that even in a violent environment there can still be compassion and connection. Rambo's concern for her safety also increases the emotional stakes because he knows that anyone who helps him can become a target. Meanwhile, the enemy becomes more aggressive in its search. Rambo realizes that remaining hidden forever is impossible, and he begins preparing for the moment when he will have to confront the enemy directly. His strategy is based on using the environment to create advantages. Dense vegetation, darkness, water, and difficult terrain all become tools that help him avoid detection. He understands that his opponents may have greater numbers, but they do not necessarily have the same knowledge of the environment or the same ability to adapt. This gives Rambo an important advantage. The story's theme of betrayal becomes even stronger as Rambo recognizes that the people on his own side may have deliberately abandoned him. The discovery of the prisoner has created a political problem, and instead of treating the rescue as a victory, the people controlling the mission appear more concerned with protecting themselves. Rambo's actions therefore challenge their authority. He has stopped behaving like a soldier who simply follows orders and has started acting like a man who believes that morality is more important than bureaucracy. This conflict gives the story a deeper meaning because it raises questions about responsibility and the treatment of soldiers after war. Rambo's frustration is understandable, but he does not allow anger to destroy his focus. His goal remains clear. He wants to get the prisoner to safety, and he is willing to take enormous risks to accomplish that objective. His determination is especially powerful because he knows that he may not receive any reward for what he is doing. He is not fighting for recognition or personal glory. He is fighting because he believes that another human being deserves to live. The physical demands of the journey continue to test him. Moving through the jungle while avoiding enemies requires enormous endurance, and Rambo is forced to operate under constant pressure. Yet the film presents his strength as something connected to experience rather than simply physical power. He understands how to conserve energy, how to remain hidden, and how to make decisions when there is little time to think. His training has prepared him for the battlefield, but his personal determination is what keeps him moving when the mission becomes emotionally overwhelming. The atmosphere becomes increasingly tense as the enemy closes in. Quiet moments are filled with uncertainty because Rambo knows that danger could appear at any moment. The jungle's natural sounds make it difficult to determine where the enemy is located, creating a sense of suspense that keeps the audience engaged. Rambo's silence becomes part of this tension because he rarely speaks, forcing his actions to communicate what he is thinking. His expressions and movements show exhaustion, anger, determination, and concern without requiring lengthy explanations. The story also continues to show how deeply Rambo has been affected by his past. Returning to the environment of war forces him to confront memories that have never truly disappeared. Yet instead of allowing those memories to make him weaker, he uses them to understand the prisoner and the other soldiers who were abandoned. In this way, his mission becomes a chance to do something meaningful in a situation where he once felt powerless. As the danger grows, Rambo becomes increasingly isolated. The people who should be supporting him are no longer reliable, and he knows that he may have to face the enemy without meaningful assistance. Still, he refuses to surrender his objective. His decision demonstrates that courage is not the absence of fear but the willingness to continue despite fear. Rambo understands the risks, yet he continues because he believes the prisoner is worth saving. By the end of this part, the story has reached another major turning point. Rambo's mission has become a direct challenge to both the enemy and the people who tried to control the truth. The prisoner needs his protection, County Bao remains in danger, and Rambo himself is becoming the target of forces on multiple sides. Nevertheless, his determination remains unbroken. He is prepared to face whatever comes next, because for Rambo, turning back now would mean accepting the abandonment and betrayal that he has spent the entire mission fighting against. Rambo's journey becomes even more intense as he realizes that the mission has completely changed and that he can no longer expect help from the people who originally sent him into the jungle. With the prisoner depending on him and enemy forces searching the area, Rambo must rely entirely on his experience, courage, and survival instincts. He understands that the situation is dangerous, but his determination to protect the abandoned soldier gives him the strength to continue. Every movement through the jungle is carefully planned because the enemy is watching the area closely, and Rambo knows that one careless decision could expose everyone. His ability to remain calm under extreme pressure becomes one of his greatest advantages. Rather than allowing fear to control him, he studies the terrain, observes the movement of the enemy, and searches for a way to create an opportunity for escape. The story continues to emphasize that Rambo is not simply a powerful fighter. He is a soldier who has learned how to survive through patience, intelligence, discipline, and experience. His relationship with County Bao also gives the story an important emotional dimension. Rambo has spent much of his life isolated from other people, but he begins to trust her because she understands the danger and continues to stand beside him. Their partnership becomes especially meaningful because Rambo realizes that her involvement has placed her in serious danger. His concern for her reveals the humanity beneath his hardened exterior, showing that despite everything he has experienced, he has not lost his ability to care for another person. At the same time, Rambo's thoughts remain focused on the prisoner. He knows that the man has already spent too much time forgotten by the outside world, and he refuses to let another opportunity for rescue disappear. His decision to continue the mission becomes a personal statement of loyalty. Rambo believes that soldiers who sacrifice their lives and freedom for their country deserve to be remembered and protected, even when political decisions make their rescue inconvenient. This belief separates him from the officials who seem more concerned about controlling information than saving lives. The theme of betrayal becomes stronger as Rambo realizes that the people behind the operation may have deliberately limited his mission. The evidence he discovered creates a problem for those who wanted the situation to remain hidden, and Rambo's determination to bring the prisoner home threatens their plans. This makes him a target not only for enemy forces but also for people on his own side. The emotional impact of this betrayal is significant because Rambo has already experienced the pain of being misunderstood and abandoned after war. Once again, he finds himself in a situation where the system that created him refuses to accept responsibility for what happens to him. Yet instead of surrendering, he chooses to follow his own moral judgment. The jungle becomes increasingly dangerous as the enemy search intensifies. Rambo must constantly move while protecting the prisoner, and the difficult terrain makes the journey exhausting. He understands that speed can create mistakes, so he carefully balances movement with caution. His ability to disappear into the environment demonstrates his exceptional survival training. He uses darkness, vegetation, natural obstacles, and his knowledge of the terrain to stay ahead of his pursuers. These moments create suspense because the audience knows that the enemy is close even when Rambo remains hidden. The action becomes more meaningful because every confrontation has a purpose. Rambo is not fighting simply to show his strength. He is fighting because someone else's life depends on him. His willingness to place himself in danger demonstrates the difference between personal revenge and genuine sacrifice. He has every reason to be angry, but his anger never becomes more important than the mission of saving the prisoner. This restraint makes him a more powerful character. The story also continues to explore the psychological impact of war. Rambo's return to the battlefield brings back memories that he cannot simply forget. The environment reminds him of a past that still affects his identity, and the treatment of the prisoners reminds him of the loneliness and pain experienced by soldiers who returned from war without support. Yet the mission gives him a sense of purpose. Instead of allowing his memories to destroy him, he uses his experiences to understand someone else's suffering. This makes his rescue attempt feel almost like an act of redemption. He cannot change the past, but he can choose to protect someone now. As the enemy closes in, the possibility of a larger confrontation becomes unavoidable. Rambo knows that hiding forever is impossible, and eventually he will have to fight his way toward safety. Even then, he remains focused on protecting the prisoner rather than simply escaping alone. His willingness to carry responsibility for another person's survival demonstrates the depth of his character. He may appear emotionally distant, but his actions repeatedly prove that he has a strong moral code. The contrast between Rambo and the officials controlling the operation becomes increasingly clear. They have the authority to make decisions from a safe distance, while Rambo is forced to face the consequences of those decisions directly. His actions challenge the idea that military orders are always morally correct. Sometimes, according to the story's perspective, doing the right thing requires a person to make a difficult choice and accept the consequences. Rambo represents that choice. He is prepared to risk his freedom and even his life because he believes that leaving the prisoner behind would be wrong. By the end of this section, the tension has reached another high point. Rambo's enemies are closing in, his official support has disappeared, and his escape route is becoming increasingly difficult. Nevertheless, his determination remains stronger than his fear. He continues moving forward because he understands that giving up would mean allowing the prisoner to remain forgotten. The story successfully prepares the audience for the next major stage by showing that Rambo's battle is no longer only against an enemy army. It is also a battle against betrayal, political decisions, and the belief that some soldiers can simply be left behind. His courage, loyalty, and refusal to surrender make the coming confrontation feel inevitable, and the next chapter promises to push Rambo's strength and determination even further. Rambo's mission reaches a critical turning point as the danger surrounding him becomes impossible to escape. He has discovered the truth about the prisoners and has chosen to act according to his own conscience rather than the limited instructions he was given. Now the enemy is actively searching for him, while the people who were supposed to support his operation appear unwilling to accept what he has found. Rambo understands that the situation has changed completely, and he can no longer depend on the original plan. His only option is to rely on his own training, instincts, and determination to protect the prisoner and find a way out. The jungle becomes increasingly hostile as enemy forces move through the area looking for any sign of Rambo's presence. He knows that remaining in one location for too long will expose him, so he constantly studies the terrain and searches for opportunities to move. His experience allows him to remain patient even when the pressure becomes overwhelming. Instead of rushing into unnecessary battles, he uses stealth and careful observation, proving that his greatest strength is not simply his ability to fight but his ability to survive. The prisoner remains at the center of Rambo's objective. Rambo understands that the man has already suffered enough and that leaving him behind would be another betrayal. This belief pushes Rambo to continue even when the odds become increasingly difficult. He is willing to place himself in danger because he believes that a soldier's life should never be treated as expendable. This emotional motivation gives the action a deeper meaning and makes Rambo's decisions feel personal rather than simply heroic for the sake of entertainment. Kobao also becomes increasingly important during this part of the story. Her presence gives Rambo someone he can trust in an environment where almost everyone else has become uncertain. She understands the risks involved and continues helping him despite the danger. Rambo's concern for her safety reveals a softer side of his personality, showing that beneath his hardened exterior he still has the ability to care deeply about another person. Their connection also increases the emotional stakes because Rambo knows that his decisions could place her directly in danger. As enemy forces continue to close in, the possibility of a direct confrontation becomes unavoidable. Rambo prepares himself mentally and physically, knowing that the next encounter may be more difficult than anything he has faced so far. His calmness under pressure is once again impressive. Even when surrounded by uncertainty, he does not allow fear to control him. He focuses on what needs to be done and refuses to waste energy on anger or panic. At the same time, the story continues to develop its theme of betrayal. Rambo begins to understand that the people behind the mission may have never intended to bring the prisoners home. The assignment may have been designed to gather evidence while avoiding the political consequences of a real rescue operation. Once Rambo discovers that the prisoners are alive, he becomes a problem for those who wanted the situation to remain hidden. This realization transforms him from a soldier completing an assignment into a man challenging the system that sent him there. The conflict therefore becomes much larger than the jungle battlefield. Rambo is fighting against an enemy he can see, but he is also confronting decisions made by people far away from the danger. The story presents a powerful contrast between Rambo's actions and the behavior of those controlling the mission. The officials have the authority to give orders, but Rambo is the one willing to risk his life for another soldier. His actions suggest that true loyalty comes from protecting people rather than simply obeying instructions. This theme gives the character greater emotional depth and explains why he refuses to give up. The physical demands of the mission also continue to increase. Rambo is forced to travel through difficult terrain while carrying the responsibility of protecting others. He faces exhaustion, uncertainty, and constant danger, yet he continues because he understands what is at stake. His endurance is impressive, but the story never makes his survival feel completely effortless. Instead, the challenges remind the audience that even someone as capable as Rambo can be pushed to his limits. His determination is what keeps him moving forward. The atmosphere remains tense because the jungle provides very little safety. Darkness can provide cover, but it can also hide enemies. Rivers and vegetation may help Rambo escape, but they can also slow him down. Every advantage comes with a risk, and Rambo must constantly make decisions based on incomplete information. This creates a strong survival element that keeps the audience engaged even between major action sequences. Rambo's emotional journey is also becoming clearer. His return to Vietnam forces him to confront memories of war that he has tried to bury. Yet instead of simply being destroyed by those memories, he uses his experiences to understand the suffering of the prisoners. His past has taught him how important it is not to abandon people who depend on you. In this way, the mission becomes a form of personal redemption. Rambo cannot change what happened during the war, but he can choose what he does now. By protecting the prisoner, he gives himself an opportunity to act differently from the people who failed him in the past. As the situation approaches another major confrontation, Rambo knows that the path ahead will be extremely difficult. He may have lost the support of the people behind the operation, but he has not lost his determination. His objective remains simple: protect the prisoner, survive the enemy, and expose the truth about what has happened. The story successfully builds anticipation by making it clear that Rambo's greatest challenge is still ahead. He is no longer simply a soldier sent into enemy territory, he has become a symbol of the men who were forgotten and the truth that others wanted to hide. By the end of this part, the tension is at a high point. Rambo is isolated, surrounded by danger, and facing forces that have every reason to stop him. Yet his determination remains unbroken. His willingness to continue despite betrayal and overwhelming odds makes him one of the most compelling action heroes of the story, and the next stage promises an even more intense battle for survival and freedom. Rambo's situation becomes even more intense as the mission reaches a point where survival depends on his ability to remain focused despite overwhelming pressure. He now understands that the people controlling the operation have their own interests, and the discovery of the prisoner has exposed a truth that they may have wanted to keep hidden. Instead of returning quietly with photographs, Rambo has chosen to protect the prisoner, and this decision places him directly against both the enemy forces and the people who were supposed to support him. The jungle becomes increasingly dangerous as enemy patrols search the area, forcing Rambo to move carefully while protecting the prisoner and staying aware of every possible threat. His experience allows him to remain calm, and he continues using the environment to his advantage. He knows that the jungle is difficult for anyone who does not understand it, so he uses its darkness, vegetation, water, and hidden paths to avoid being easily detected. Rambo's ability to adapt under pressure shows why he is such an effective soldier. He does not depend only on strength. He understands timing, patience, observation, and strategy. The emotional side of the story also becomes stronger as Rambo realizes that the prisoner has been suffering for years. His own experiences make it impossible for him to ignore that suffering. Rambo knows what war can do to a person's mind and body, and he understands the loneliness of returning from a conflict that other people would rather forget. This connection gives his rescue mission a deeper purpose. He is not simply trying to complete an assignment, he is trying to prove that the soldiers left behind still matter. Kobau remains close to Rambo during this dangerous period, and their relationship becomes an important source of emotional strength. Rambo rarely allows himself to trust others, but County Bayo's courage and loyalty make him willing to take that risk. Their partnership also makes the danger more personal because Rambo knows that her involvement puts her life at risk. He becomes increasingly determined to protect both her and the prisoner, even though doing so makes his own escape much more difficult. Meanwhile, the pressure from the enemy continues to increase. Rambo realizes that there will eventually be a moment when hiding is no longer possible, and he begins preparing himself for direct confrontation. Even then, he does not rush into battle. He carefully studies the situation and waits for the right opportunity, demonstrating the discipline that separates him from ordinary fighters. His goal is not simply to defeat the enemy but to create a path toward survival. The film continues to explore the theme of betrayal through Rambo's growing realization that his own side may have abandoned him. He had entered the jungle believing that he was part of an official operation, but the more he learns, the more he understands that the mission may have been designed to control information rather than rescue the prisoners. This realization creates a powerful emotional conflict because Rambo has spent his life serving his country, yet he is now discovering that the system he trusted may not value the soldiers he risked his life to protect. Instead of allowing this betrayal to break him, Rambo turns it into motivation. He decides that the truth is more important than obedience. The action sequences become increasingly tense because Rambo is forced to operate with limited resources while facing a much larger enemy force. Every movement carries consequences, and every decision could affect the lives of the people with him. His physical endurance is pushed to its limits, but his determination remains stronger than his exhaustion. He continues because stopping would mean accepting defeat and allowing the prisoner to remain forgotten. The jungle setting continues to create a strong feeling of isolation. Rambo is surrounded by natural beauty, yet he cannot relax for even a moment. The environment is filled with hidden dangers, and the constant possibility of discovery keeps the tension high. The film uses this setting to show how alone Rambo really is. Even though he has military training, he is essentially operating on his own, relying on his instincts rather than official support. His isolation also reflects his emotional state. Rambo has always struggled to find a place in ordinary society, and the battlefield is one of the few environments where his abilities make complete sense. Yet even here, he is betrayed by the system that created him. This contradiction makes his character tragic as well as heroic. As the story approaches another major turning point, Rambo becomes more determined than ever to complete his self-appointed mission. He knows that the enemy will not simply allow him to walk away with the prisoner, and he suspects that the people controlling the operation may try to erase the evidence of what happened. Nevertheless, he refuses to surrender. His actions demonstrate a powerful belief that one person's life can be worth risking everything to save. By the end of this part, the tension has reached a new level. Rambo is surrounded by enemies, his trust in the official mission has disappeared, and the safety of the prisoner in County Bow depends heavily on his decisions. The story has now moved beyond a simple military assignment and become a personal struggle against betrayal, abandonment, and injustice. Rambo's determination remains unbroken, and the growing danger suggests that the next stage of his journey will test his courage, endurance, and loyalty more than ever before. Rambo's struggle reaches an even more dangerous stage as the mission completely breaks away from its original plan and becomes a fight for survival and justice. He now understands that the people controlling the operation are not necessarily interested in rescuing the prisoners, and this realization changes everything about his mission. Instead of waiting for someone else to make the right decision, Rambo takes responsibility for the lives that have been placed in his hands. His determination becomes stronger because he knows that the prisoner may have been forgotten by everyone except him. Moving through the jungle, Rambo remains constantly alert, using his military training to read the terrain and anticipate the movements of the enemy. He knows that the slightest mistake could expose his position, so every step is carefully considered. The jungle is filled with natural obstacles, unpredictable weather, and hidden dangers, but Rambo turns these difficulties into advantages by using the environment as protection. His ability to survive in such conditions demonstrates why he is such a formidable soldier. He does not depend on brute force alone, he combines patience, intelligence, experience, and physical endurance to stay alive. The emotional tension also becomes stronger as Rambo's connection with County Bow continues to develop. She understands that Rambo is taking enormous risks because he refuses to leave the prisoner behind, and her willingness to stand beside him gives him a rare sense of trust and companionship. Rambo, who has spent much of his life isolated from others, begins to show genuine concern for someone outside himself. This makes his character more human and gives the story an emotional center beyond the action. Meanwhile, the enemy continues searching for Rambo and the prisoner, making escape increasingly difficult. Rambo realizes that simply moving quickly will not be enough. He must carefully choose his route and avoid direct confrontation whenever possible. However, the pressure continues to grow, and the possibility of a major confrontation becomes unavoidable. The story also strengthens its theme of betrayal as Rambo begins to recognize that his greatest enemies may include people who were supposed to be on his side. The mission was presented as an opportunity to discover the truth, but once Rambo actually finds evidence of the prisoners, the response from those in control becomes suspicious. This creates a powerful conflict between Rambo's moral responsibility and the orders he was originally given. He understands that following instructions blindly could result in innocent lives being lost, so he chooses to trust his own judgment. That decision becomes one of the most important moments in his journey. Rambo has been trained to obey, but he has also learned from war that decisions made far away from the battlefield can have devastating consequences for soldiers on the ground. His refusal to abandon the prisoner therefore represents his rejection of that kind of thinking. He believes that every soldier deserves to be remembered and protected, regardless of political decisions or military calculations. The action becomes more intense as the enemy begins closing the distance. Rambo's ability to remain calm under pressure is tested repeatedly, but he refuses to panic. He knows that fear can lead to mistakes, so he controls his emotions and focuses on the immediate objective. His survival instincts become increasingly important as the situation moves toward a larger confrontation. Even when he appears isolated and outnumbered, Rambo continues searching for opportunities to escape and protect those around him. The story also shows the physical and emotional cost of his journey. Rambo is not an invincible machine. He becomes tired, faces constant danger, and carries the psychological weight of everything he has experienced. Yet his determination allows him to continue when another person might have surrendered. His strength comes from a deep belief that the mission matters. He is fighting for the prisoner, for the soldiers who never came home, and perhaps also for himself, because completing this rescue gives him an opportunity to confront the painful memories that have followed him since the war. The jungle remains visually important throughout this section, creating an atmosphere of isolation and uncertainty. The contrast between the peaceful appearance of nature and the violence occurring within it makes the environment feel almost unreal. Rambo must remain invisible while moving through a place where danger can appear from any direction. The tension comes from knowing that the enemy is nearby even when the screen becomes quiet. This makes the quieter moments just as important as the action because they allow the audience to feel the uncertainty surrounding Rambo. As the story progresses, his objective becomes clearer. He must find a way to get the prisoner to safety despite the forces working against him. The original mission has effectively disappeared, replaced by Rambo's personal commitment to doing what he believes is right. His actions demonstrate that loyalty is not always about obeying orders. Sometimes it means protecting the people who depend on you even when authority tells you to walk away. By the end of this part, Rambo is facing a situation that seems increasingly impossible. The enemy is closing in, his support system is disappearing, and the people behind the operation may be determined to stop him. Nevertheless, he refuses to surrender his purpose. His courage, discipline, and determination continue to drive him forward, setting the stage for an even more intense confrontation in the next part of the story. Rambo's situation becomes even more dangerous as the mission turns into a direct struggle against the forces determined to prevent him from completing his objective. He has already discovered the truth about the prisoners, and now his determination to rescue them becomes stronger than ever. The jungle is no longer simply a difficult environment, it has become a battlefield where every movement carries enormous risk. Rambo knows that the enemy is searching for him, so he carefully studies the terrain, listens for movement, and uses his surroundings to remain hidden. His patience and discipline allow him to survive situations that would overwhelm an ordinary soldier, but the emotional pressure continues to increase because he knows that other lives depend on his decisions. The prisoner becomes more than someone Rambo was ordered to locate. He represents every soldier who was left behind after the war, and this gives Rambo a powerful personal reason to continue. He understands the pain of being treated as though the war is over while the memories and consequences remain alive inside the people who fought it. Because of this, Rambo refuses to abandon the man even when the situation appears almost impossible. Kobau continues to support him, and their connection becomes increasingly meaningful. Rambo is usually a solitary character who trusts very few people, but his partnership with County Bao gives him a sense of companionship that he rarely experiences. She understands the danger surrounding them and recognizes that Rambo's determination comes from something deeper than military orders. Their cooperation also adds emotional tension because Rambo knows that anyone who helps him can become a target. As the enemy increases its search, Rambo must make difficult choices about when to move and when to remain hidden. He uses his knowledge of the jungle to create distance from his pursuers, taking advantage of natural cover and difficult terrain. His approach demonstrates that he is not simply a powerful fighter, he is a highly intelligent survivalist who understands how to turn disadvantage into opportunity. Every movement is calculated, and every decision is made with the safety of the prisoner in mind. At the same time, the possibility of betrayal from his own side becomes increasingly serious. Rambo begins to understand that the mission may have been designed to gather information without actually rescuing anyone. This realization creates anger and disappointment, but he does not allow those emotions to distract him. Instead, they strengthen his determination to expose the truth. He begins to see that completing the mission according to the original instructions would mean accepting a system that is willing to leave soldiers behind. Rambo refuses to accept that outcome. The story therefore develops an important conflict between official orders and personal morality. Rambo may have been trained to obey commands, but his experiences have taught him that following orders without questioning their consequences can sometimes lead to terrible results. His decision to rescue the prisoner becomes a powerful expression of loyalty to his fellow soldiers rather than loyalty to the people sitting safely far away from the battlefield. The tension grows as the enemy closes in and Rambo realizes that there may soon be no opportunity for a quiet escape. He prepares himself for the possibility of a larger confrontation while continuing to protect the people around him. His physical exhaustion becomes less important than his determination. Even when he is surrounded by danger, he refuses to give up because he knows that surrender could mean returning to the same system that abandoned the prisoners in the first place. The film also continues to emphasize Rambo's emotional isolation. He has spent years carrying memories that few people understand, and his return to the battlefield forces those memories back into his mind. Yet instead of allowing his past to control him, he uses it to understand the suffering of others. This makes his mission deeply personal. He is not simply trying to change the outcome of one operation. He is trying to give meaning to the sacrifices of people who never receive the chance to come home. The jungle sequences remain visually powerful because the environment creates a constant feeling of uncertainty. Darkness, rain, thick vegetation, and hidden paths make it difficult to know where the enemy is located. Rambo's ability to remain invisible becomes essential, and the tension comes from knowing that even a small mistake could reveal his position. The film's atmosphere successfully combines survival adventure with emotional drama, making the action feel connected to the character rather than existing only for entertainment. As this section progresses, Rambo becomes increasingly isolated from the people who were supposed to support him. His trust in the official mission has almost completely disappeared, but his belief in the importance of the rescue remains stronger than ever. This contrast gives the story its emotional power. Rambo may have lost faith in the system, but he has not lost faith in the value of human life. He continues moving forward because he believes that one soldier's life is worth risking everything to save. By the end of this part, the situation has reached another critical point. Rambo is no longer simply trying to complete a mission. He is preparing to challenge everyone who stands between him and the truth. The enemy is closing in, his allies are in danger, and the people controlling the operation may be working against him. Yet Rambo remains determined, focused, and ready for whatever comes next.